Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Columbus, Georgia. We are an inclusive spiritual community. So what does that mean? We are Christians, Jews, Buddhists, atheists, agnostics, humanists, Wiccans, pagans, and assorted other religions, all coming together in one building. And you might be asking yourself, how do we get along? And the answer is simple. We don't, at least not all the time. But we do share a commitment to support each other in our own personal and unique searches for truth and meaning. So let's get started this Sunday morning. We start our services by lighting the chalice, which symbolizes for us reason, tolerance, and freedom, but also respect, compassion, and love. I'm Bill Harlan, your volunteer service leader on this Sunday, September 27th. We are coming to you pre-recorded on YouTube while we figure out how to live during the current pandemic. I'm not a minister. We don't have one. We're a small fellowship. Instead, on Sundays, as members and friends, we gather together to recharge our spirits and to remind each other why we are drawn to this particular beloved community. That's a thing, by the way. Martin Luther King talked about beloved communities as part of a global vision. Beloved communities are based on justice, equal opportunity, and love of our fellow human beings. And of course, love for friends and family. So this morning, our guest speaker is Hannah Israel. She's an artist, an art professor, a gallery director, and the photographs you saw at the beginning of our service came from Hannah, and they're of some art projects around Columbus, some public art projects that she's helped organize, and she's going to talk to us about building art-based communities, which to me sounds like a subset of beloved communities. We'll find out what Hannah thinks, so stick around. First, some announcements. The big news. Next Sunday, October 4th, after 6 months of isolation on our digital desert islands, we are reopening the fellowship, sort of. We'll have an in-person outdoor service officiated by our lay leader, Rick Spradlin. Social distancing will be in place. Masks will be required. If you're uncomfortable meeting in person, even in this kind of environment, don't worry. We're still going to record and post early Sunday morning a video for you to watch. This is an experiment. No matter how good these videos get, and we keep trying to improve them every week, it's not the same as meeting each other face to face. So we're going to start out with this little outdoor experiment. It'll be basically the same experience. So we look forward to seeing some of you there. Another announcement I want to make is that this fellowship has really supported in a big way a local organization that I'm involved with called Paz Amigos. And this organization helps immigrants released from the Stewart Detention Center near Lumpkin. These guys are released in the clothes they were arrested in, which is usually at our southern border, so they might have t-shirts, light summer clothing, and when they're released, they're off to play all over the country, usually to family or friends while they're either on parole or bond, and they have no coats. They need coats. We're collecting coats for them. So you can do that by emailing the fellowship here, UUFCGA@gmail.com, and put Judy Barnett in the subject line and let us know you have some coats, and Judy will contact you and you will figure out how to get that done. Paz Amigos also, by the way, is a 501c3 corporation, so they can also use cash, and you can go to their website and find out how to do that. So let's get ourselves centered. and focused on what we're here to do this morning. And we usually do that by affirming the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism, which sum up our core values. And normally, I would be flashing some key words up over my right shoulder here, but I'm going to do something different today because I was inspired Tuesday night watching a webinar for a movement called UU the Vote. And this organization comes out of Unitarian Universalist Association, and they are encouraging, supporting, urging, inspiring people to get out to vote and work to get other people to get out to vote, because this election on November 3rd is one of the most important elections we've had since I've been alive, and I'm pretty old. 37 days until this election. And of course we're going to vote. Of course you're already registered, but you can do more. I can do more. So I'm going to put while I read the 7 principles, I'm going to put the web address for UU the Vote up over my right shoulder, and I'm going to put another web address for Stacey Abrams' organization, Fair Fight. And we all know Stacey Abrams, and her organization, Fair Fight, is fighting for fair elections, free and fair elections, not only in Georgia, but all across the nation. So I'm going to leave these 2 organizations up over my right shoulder, and I'm going to read the 7 principles, and without telling you how to vote, let's just explore the 7 principles and decide whether this election in 37 days applies to them. So our first principle: the inherent worth and dignity of every person. No brainer. Justice, check. Equity, check. And compassion, check, in human relations. Acceptance of one another, check. An encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. A free and responsible search for truth, check, and meaning. 5, the right of conscience, check, and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, also a check. 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Check, 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 and check. 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Check. We call ourselves a religion of deeds, not creeds. And one thing I learned Tuesday night watching the UU the Vote webinar was the next 37 days are a real opportunity to make that real. Deeds, not creeds. We connect. Please join me. And if you're having trouble figuring out how these websites work, email me, Bill Harlan. Use our uufcga@gmail.com address, and we'll get together and we'll figure out something to do during these next few weeks. So another way we proclaim the vitality of our fellowship is we share brief and personal joys and concerns. And I'm going to start by lighting a candle for concerns you might have that you didn't feel like you wanted to make public. And we also want to be thinking about Barbara Owens today. Her cousin Daryl passed away this week. He had a history of heart problems, but also he had battled COVID-19 earlier this summer. So the family thinks that, well, maybe that played a role in his death. It's hard to tell. But let's keep Barbara in our thoughts and prayers. Also this week, the entire community of Columbus, Georgia suffered a big loss with the passing of Bob Poidashev, former mayor of Columbus. He was mayor from 2003 to 2007, I think, and our own Ed Wilson worked with him as kind of an aide de camp, if I've got that right. Bob was a veteran of the U.S. Army and an attorney, and he was known throughout town as Uncle Bob, and I didn't know him very well, but I always got the Uncle Bob treatment downtown. You could hear him coming a mile away. A great guy. So I'm going to light a couple candles, one for Barbara's family and one for the Poitashef family. This is the part of the service we've reserved for reading, and I want to do something a little unusual this week. John Campbell is one of my oldest and closest friends. He's a college pal and a bicycling partner, and we are unindicted co-conspirators in a number of adventures throughout our lives. He's also a writer and a producer and a raconteur and a rock and roll drummer, and most relevant, a voiceover artist. If you've spent any time in the bluegrass region of Kentucky where John lives, you have heard the voice of John Eric Campbell. So I asked him a while back if he'd do a reading for us, just do the audio and we'd provide the video, and he said, sure. And I said, well, how about Wendell Berry? And he was happy to do that. He not only was familiar with Wendell Berry's work, but he had shaken Wendell Berry's hand. And he said that when he did it, he told Mr. Berry, I have now shaken hands with the two greatest Kentuckians, Muhammad Ali and Wendell Berry. And that got a smile. So Wendell Berry is also kind of the poet laureate of UU, or one of the several poet laureates of UU. Matter of fact, 5 of his poems are in our hymnal. 4 of them are readings, and one of them is a hymn, which, by the way, was Whit's introductory piece, which I asked Whit at the last minute, hey, play this. No problem for Whit. So John picked none of those readings. Instead, he picked a passage from a Wendell Berry novel called Jayber Crow, and it's an interesting passage, requires just a little bit of a setup. The character is talking about how much he loves coming to this little country church. And I think how he describes it will be kind of surprising, and I think it'll resonate with a lot of us. Let's listen.
What gave me the most pleasure of all was just going up there, whatever the occasion, and sitting down with the people. I always wished a little that the church was not a church, set off as it was behind its barriers of doctrine and creed, so that all the people of the town and neighborhood might 2 or 3 times a week freely have come there and sat down together, though I knew perfectly well that in the actual world any gathering would exclude some, and some would not consent to be gathered, and some, like me, would be outside even when inside. I liked the naturally occurring silences. The one, for instance, just before the service began, and the other, the briefest imaginable, just after the last amen. Occasionally, a preacher would come who had a little bias toward silence, and then my attendance would become purposeful. At a certain point in the service, the preacher would ask that we observe a moment of silence. You could hear a little rustle as the people settled down into that deliberate cessation. And then the quiet that was almost the quiet of the empty church would come over us and unite us as we were not united even in singing. And the little sounds, maybe a bird's song from the world outside, would come into us, and we would completely hear it. But always too soon the preacher would become abashed. After all, he was being paid to talk, and start a prayer, and the beautiful moment would end. I would think again how I would like for us all to just go there from time to time and sit in silence. Maybe I am a Quaker of sorts, but I'm told that the Quakers sometimes speak at their meetings. I would have preferred no talk, no noise at all.
Now it's time for another great piece of writing, this one by our own Ed Wilson. It's our Celebration of Life toast. It's not a sacrament, it's just a friendly tradition. I will read the toast and you can join in on the last line. So grab something to drink that's appropriate for wherever you are or whenever you are. And if you'll raise your glasses or cups with me, I'll read the toast. We celebrate life with its beauty and its pain. We lift these cups in tribute to the achievements of human minds and hands and in sensitivity to the frustrations of misfortune and heartache, not fixing blame or credit for the outcome of chance, sensing the risk, savoring the joy, sharing it all, knowing of the certainty of death and remembering the value of each moment. We drink our toast of celebration to this time, to the future, to each other, to the throbbing of the earth and sea and sky with life. Together, we drink this toast in celebration of life. You know what this is. A member of our fellowship called this the show me the money part. It's the offering. You know the drill. We are working very hard to keep this fellowship together during the pandemic, and your help is much appreciated. We've got a beautiful facility in Grace Fellowship Hall. We've made lots of improvements. It's paid for, which is a UU miracle in itself, but we have a pesky roof leak. It's right over there, and that's going to cost us some money. And it just costs money. There's expenses that we have day to day, come rain or shine, come pandemic or more pandemic. So your help is much appreciated. And Whitaker is going to play for us while we all search for our checkbooks or open our digital devices and log on to PayPal. You can mail checks to Box 698, Fortson, Georgia, 31808. And once you've signed into PayPal, which is even easier, you can hit the send button and then the recipient put our ubiquitous email address, uufcga@gmail.com. Easy as pie. Whitaker, if you will. Thank you, Whitaker. Our speaker is Hannah Israel. She's a professor of art at Columbus State University and director of the Ilges Gallery at CSU. She's also an artist in her own right. She works in sculpture, video, and installations. Check out her website. It's really worth a look. I'll add that Head is a pretty good tennis player, too. She's going to talk about an art-based community and maybe answer my question: is an art-based community part of the idea of a beloved community? I'm guessing it is, but we'll find out for sure. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you, Bill, and thanks for having me here. It's such an honor. I am giving a talk about building art-based communities. To most of us, it's common knowledge that placing art in our community adds an enormous value. It brings cultural, aesthetic, and economic vitality to our world. It contributes to a community's identity, fosters community pride, and a sense of belonging. And it enhances the quality of our lives. Art plays an important and integrated role in place-based community planning and development. As an artist, curator, and citizen, I'm interested in how we can integrate art as means for cultural development, social change, and historical identity. Putting art in the center of how we can develop our community will enhance our lives by allowing hard-to-discuss issues that inspires us to look beyond what we believe to be possible and create awareness and imagine more of a vibrant and exciting future. Also, prioritizing art-based projects that provide access to the arts for underserved communities is a key. This can include communities that face systemic barriers as defined by and not to race, ethnicity, geography, immigration status, disability, socioeconomic status, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, and veteran status, especially here in our community. The beauty of this activity also allows us to unite, to bring together partnership, and creating diverse roles for collaboration. Take, for example, the mural project at the Bibb City Community Orchard that Brad Barnes, who's a friend of mine, directed with the help of CSU art students, Rainey McCullers, high school students, and people from the neighborhood. This art initiative program was a complete collaboration. He and his partner, Jen Collins, got the idea for from the community roundtable that happens around once a year. I'm sure some of you have attended that roundtable. After participating in the discussion, Brad applied for a grant and received the funding from the Chattahoochee Valley Community Foundation. This project was a wonderful story. To some of you who might know them, Mr. Barnes and his partner, Jen Collins, also started the Dew Point Farm, which is an urban neighborhood farm in Midtown area. The land that they bought in Bibb City for the orchard was purchased by a land bill of sale. They envisioned bringing in ways to provide free food in the community and awareness about food insecurity. So he reached out to me to come up with a design for a fence mural. While planning the design, I decided to leave some room for interpretation to let the CSU art student and high school student have an input. This is really important in community art-based project. They decided that it was important to represent the foliage that existed in the garden. And years from now, when the trees come to reach full maturity, we hope that the mural fence and the foliage will aesthetically become one. I was really pleased by what we pulled together to make this area of Bibb City vibrant, come to life to create awareness and provide food to locals and passerbys. So, all over American cities and towns, They aspire to be places where people want to live and want to move to or even visit. They have created ways to develop certain identity, especially in terms of what towns look like. This is becoming even more important in a world where every place tends to look alike. Urban design is setting trends to give communities a stronger sense of place. This alludes to the way we think about places with iconic landmarks, such as consider the Statue of Liberty. We know it's New York City, St. Louis Arch, Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and a newer one, the Cloud in Anish Kapoor, where it reflects the city on every surface. If some of you who don't know that, it's shaped like a bean. These landmarks have become symbols that captured our spirits and defined the identities of all those cities. Can you imagine a world without art and architecture? Without markers and symbols? The absence of art would rip off human identity. Even in cities around the globe, there's an exciting movement and trend through co sharing ideas. Models that help connect artists, designers, engineers, city planners, business owners, locals, entrepreneurs, community leaders, and more, and to have them get together and to think deeply about their communities, such as the example of the Bibb City Community Orchard or the MLK Trail Project, which was led by Amanda Rees with the CSU students, Midtown Inc., and faculty. I've also seen this movement in Germany, in Italy, New York, Atlanta, and it's here now in Columbus, where local citizens are partnering with artists to address challenges and make positive change. Currently, I'm working with some amazing artists, students, and community leaders who are collaborating in bringing We Cannot Walk Alone, an advocacy through art. With the support of CSU, Dragonfly Trail, and other partners, we are planning several mural projects, a mobile art container, performances, and film screening in areas that are underserved. The things that we were thinking about as a group is to serve ideas that would impact what we're going through right now in our world. We would like to talk about social justice, unity, and healing. This movement isn't about positioning artists as special outsider who parachute and fixes things, but as neighbors who are one part of a whole set of things. A community can do this to be healthy. Art can plant seeds of ideas, but they need everyone's help to water it so that it would develop and grow. Artists brings their own creative skill set to those conversations, which can also inspire creativity in others. Ideally, bringing the means of decisions and problem solving to a more responsive and imaginative results. The ideas that artists contribute are valuable when they are included in the mix of planners, engineers, designers, elected officials, and community stakeholders who are involved in that planning process. As I indicated earlier, it takes a village. In 2016, Artbeat of Columbus has sponsored a public art initiative, Before I Die, by Candy Chang. These were placed all over the city in Columbus. The artist, drawing upon Michel Montaigne, positioned that to philosophize is to learn to die. The Before I Die project reimagined ways the walls of our cities can help us grapple with death and meaning as, as it is in communities today. Before I Die has become a global participatory public art project that reimagines our relationship with death and with one another. This is something that we really need right now in our community. The original wall was created on an abandoned house in New Orleans by artist Candy Chang after the death of someone she loved. Since then, over 5,000 Before I Die walls have been created in 78 countries around the world. Each wall is created by local residents who want to make a space in their community to restore perspective and share more with one another. And each wall is a tribute to living an examined life. Public art is an important part of our history and our growing culture. It reflects and reveals our society. It adds meaning to our cities and uniqueness to our communities. It also questions our history and provokes movements and changes. Take, for example, the controversial removal of Confederate statues all around the world. Well, not all around the world, but they are taking statues around the world. Public art humanizes the built environment and invigorates public space. It provides an intersection between past, present, and future, between disciplines and ideas. Public art also offers us a way to interact and feel like we belong. For example, the mural by Hans, who's also known as Alex Brewer, on 1200 block of Broadway, or the mural by Evelyn Henson on 12th Street and 2nd Avenue. We've seen these images of murals on social media, such as Facebook and Instagram, where families and friends post in front of the artwork. Young people make memories of their proms, weddings, engagement, or even some baby gender reveal, as well as famous dance group creating dance music and videos. It brings people together to express and share their emotions, talents, and memories. Before I go further, I would like to share how to create a historical framework of the origin of how art developed using mark making in outdoor spaces. One of the earliest processes that's been recorded is, of course, a mural, which is defined as painting executed directly on a wall, ceiling, or even permanent and other permanent surfaces. The origins of art in environments has been around for thousands of years. Art historians have even said that mark making on surfaces of caves and stones were one of the first art forms. Let's take one of the earliest known mural in Maltravieso Cave in Cacares, Spain, from 64,000 years ago, of red hand stencils made by Neanderthals, or the famous cave paintings of Lascaux in France from 20,000 years ago. Both of these murals provided us with information about the society that was living there at that time. It was also often noted in some historical findings that the majority of the artists of these cave paintings were of women. The impact of these records and markings is historical. We don't have to imagine how they lived or what they ate, how they functioned. The markings left gave us a recorded information. As civilization thrived and advanced, language became complex and recording history developed, even more as seen in the Egyptian hieroglyphics and tomb paintings. In the Middle Ages, murals were typically executed on dry plaster. In the 14th century, Italian artists developed an innovative way to apply murals on wet plaster called fresco secco. This brought us Da Vinci's Last Supper and Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. The subject matter of these murals were of Christian themes because it's often commissioned by Catholic Church. These frescoes influenced many great works all over Europe. In the 20th century, the Mexican mural movement associated with Diego Rivera brought a new level of development in murals. His works, influenced by Cubism and Expressionism, incorporated social and political commentaries. He helped popularize murals in Mexico, Central America, and the United States. The influence of this mural to the Mexican mural movement, which focused on socio-political messages, created and shaped the Chicano identity. Later in the 60s, the African American community mural movement were influenced by the civil rights and post-civil rights liberation struggles and focused on cultural and aesthetic of the Black arts movement and the Black Panther Ministry of Culture. One of the most famous mural was called the Wall of Respect, painted in 1967 in Chicago. Local residents, poets, painters, photographers, and gang members gathered to dedicate the Wall of Respect, a mural painted on the side of a dilapidated tavern on the southeast corner of 43rd Street and Langley Avenue in Chicago's impoverished Grand Boulevard neighborhood. It was a revolutionary act of art and politics that has reverberated through the nation ever since. It sparked a community-based outdoor mural movement that has provided thousands of neighborhoods of virtually every ethnicity and economic level with the language and format for asserting their pride and distinctiveness. In the 70s and 80s, graffiti art painted urban buildings, transits, pavements, and public objects. It brought us artists such as Keith Haring, Basquiat, TDK Crew, and Phase 2. From the 90s to today, street art, community mural, and graffiti movements has been a major source of how art-based community had been reimagined. Mural painting itself has experienced an amazing renaissance. In private residences and public buildings, especially in North America, Europe, and South America, murals have a dramatic impact, whether consciously or subconsciously, on the attitudes of viewers. Furthermore, the presence of large murals adds emotional quality to our lives. Public art simulates learning and thought, visual language, and interconnectedness. It is uniquely accessible and enables people to experience art in course of our daily lives, outside of museums and other cultural institutions. I feel like I'm surrounded by this all the time in downtown Columbus. Public art also provides everyone in the community direct and ongoing encounters with art. It engages social interaction, both during the selection process and following installation. And an artwork can lead the viewer towards self-reflection and awareness. Art has been witnessed throughout history. Building art-based community can be an essential element when our city wishes to progress economically and to be viable to serve prospective citizens. Data strongly indicates that cities with an active and dynamic cultural scene are more attractive to individuals and businesses. We have witnessed these changes in different parts of our city, such as the uptown area in Columbus. Public art can be a key factor in establishing a unique and culturally active place. It can create civic icons, but it can also transform our playgrounds, train stations, bus stations, traffic circles, now that we have those around, hospitals, water treatment facilities, and airports, into a more vibrant expression of human imagination. It can also change underserved neighborhoods, and it can also bring in education into those places. Art is a catalyst for community generation and regeneration by building and reinforcing these types of culture. In this case, size does not really matter. Public art can be very visible, large, permanent, unmistakable as an art experience, but it can also be subtle, short lived, seamlessly integrated into one's experience of a place. In closing, building art based projects in the community transcends boundaries and overcomes differences between people. We're all creative beings, whether we're artists, musicians, geographers, poets, dancers, muralists, storytellers, engineers in a medical field, environmentalist, or an audience. We're all connected. Thank you.
Hannah, thank you very much. You know, there are lots of these art projects. You can still catch glimpses of them around town, so be on the lookout. We extinguish the chalice here that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. And now you can join me in our closing words, which I'm sure we've all committed to memory. With unity of spirit, we go our ways in universal fellowship until we meet again. And Whitaker is going to play us home. Thanks, Whitaker.